Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Path of Grace Network YouTube channel. I just wanted to say before we begin, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss any future Christian content. Also, let me know in the comments what topics you'd like me to cover in upcoming videos. I'd love to hear your suggestions and continue exploring faith, history, and the Bible together. Now, for our first video, let's dive into one of the most fascinating and controversial religious artifacts in the world, the Shroud of Turin. For centuries, this linen cloth has captured the attention of believers, scientists, historians, and skeptics alike. Some people believe it is the actual burial cloth of Jesus Christ, while others argue that it is just a medieval creation. Despite decades of research, the mystery surrounding the shroud remains unsolved. So what exactly is the Shroud of Turin? Where did it come from, and why is it still being debated today? Let's take a closer look. The Shroud of Turin is a large piece of linen measuring about 14 feet long and 3.5 feet wide. What makes it extraordinary is the faint image visible on its surface. The image appears to show the front and back of a man who seems to have suffered severe injuries consistent with the crucifixion as stated in the Bible in the New Testament. Today, the shroud is kept in the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist in Turin, Italy, where it has been preserved for centuries. It is only displayed on special occasions due to its historical and religious significance. Many Christians who believe in the authenticity of the shroud view it as the burial cloth that wrapped Jesus after his crucifixion. According to the gospel accounts, Jesus was buried in a linen cloth before his resurrection. Supporters of the shroud's authenticity point to various details in the image that they believe match the injuries described in the scripture. However, establishing the shroud's true origin has proven to be extremely important. The documented history of the shroud begins in the mid-14th century in France. Around the 1350s, the cloth was displayed in a church in the town of Léré. This is the first clear historical record of its existence. Because there is no undisputed documentation tracing the cloth back to the 1st century, critics argue that this gap in the historical record raises serious questions about its authenticity. Over time, the shroud passed through the hands of noble families before eventually being transferred to Turin, Italy in the late 1500s. Since then, it has remained there and become one of the most studied artifacts in human history. One of the most important moments in the shroud's story occurred in 1898. An Italian photographer named Secondo Pia was allowed to photograph the cloth. When he developed the photographic plates, he made a surprising discovery. The negative image on the photograph appeared much more detailed and lifelike than the image seen directly on the cloth. In other words, the shroud seemed to function almost like a photographic negative centuries before photography was even invented or existed, which is insane to think about. This discovery sparked worldwide interest and has led many people to reconsider the possibility that the cloth could be much older than previously thought. As scientific interest grew, researchers began studying the image in greater detail. One of the biggest mysteries is how the image was formed. As I'm sure you guys are all aware, unlike ordinary paintings, the image is not created by visible brushstrokes. Studies have found that the discoloration affects only the outermost fibers of the linen. Scientists have proposed numerous explanations. Some suggest that chemical reactions between the cloth and the body produce the images. Others believe heat, radiation, or natural processes may have been involved. Skeptics, though, argue that medieval artists may have used techniques that have not yet been fully understood. To this day, in the present, there is universally no accepted explanation for how the image was even formed. Another fascinating aspect about the Shroud of Turin is the wounds visible on the figure. The man appears to have injuries on his wrists, feet, back, head, and side. Supporters note similarities between these injuries and descriptions of Jesus Christ's crucifixion found in the New Testament. The marks on the back resemble wounds from whipping. There appear to be bloodstains around the head, which some interpret as evidence of a crown of thorns. There is also a wound in the side and blood flow patterns that researchers have analyzed extensively. However, critics point out that interpreting these details can be subjective. They argue that similarities alone do not prove that the cloth belonged to Jesus. Perhaps the most scientific test on the shroud occurred in 1988, and scientists from laboratories all around the world, Oxford, Zurich, and Arizona, performed radiocarbon dating on samples taken from the cloth itself. Carbon dating, as if you guys don't know, is a technique used to estimate the age of organic Materials. The results suggested that the linen was produced sometime between 1260 and 1390 AD. If correct, this would place the shroud firmly in the medieval period, more than 1,000 years after the death of Jesus. For many skeptics, this seemed to settle the debate. However, supporters of the shroud's authenticity challenged the results. Some argue that the testing sample came from an area that may have been repaired after damage caused by a fire in 1532. Others have suggested that contamination over centuries could have affected the dating. As a result, debate over the carbon dating results continue today. The shroud has also been examined using modern imaging technology. Researchers have discovered that the image contains information related to depth and distance, allowing computer-generated three-dimensional representations to be created from the cloth. This unusual characteristic is one reason why the shroud continues to intrigue scientists. While not necessarily proving authenticity, it adds another layer to the mystery. The Catholic Church has taken a careful position regarding the shroud. The Church does not officially declare it to be the burial cloth of Jesus. Instead, it recognizes the shroud as an important object of devotion and reflection. Popes throughout modern history have acknowledged the significance of the artifact, while leaving questions about its origin open to scientific investigation. This balanced approach reflects the broader challenge surrounding the shroud itself. Faith and science often approach the artifact from different perspectives, as we see here. For believers, such as myself, the shroud may serve as a powerful reminder of the life, suffering, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. For scientists and historians, it represents a fascinating puzzle that requires evidence, testing, and critical analysis. Even after more than a century of intense study, experts still disagree on many key questions. Was the image formed naturally? Could it have been created by a medieval artist? Is the carbon dating accurate? Could future testing reveal new information? These questions remain unanswered. What makes the Shroud of Turin so compelling is that it sits at the intersection of history, religion, art, and science. Few artifacts to this day have inspired as much investigation or debate. Whether one views it as a sacred relic, a remarkable historical object, or an unsolved mystery, the Shroud continues to captivate millions of people around the world. In the end, the Shroud of Turin remains exactly what it has been for centuries, a mystery. It challenges researchers to search for answers, encourages believers to reflect on their faith, and reminds us that some questions about the past are far more complicated than they first appear. Thank you for watching the video on the Path of Grace Network. If you enjoy this content, please like, subscribe, and share this video with others who may find it interesting. And don't forget to comment below. Do you believe the Shroud of Turin is the authentic burial cloth of Jesus Christ, or do you think it is a medieval creation? Thank you for watching, and God bless.